This book was generated using Speakter's AI voices. You can create human-like voiceovers in over 50 languages.
The moonlit streets of London cast long shadows as night settled over the city. Walter Hartwright, a young drawing master, made his way to his mother's house, relishing the tranquil evening. His footsteps echoed softly on the cobblestones, a rhythmic counterpoint to the gentle whisper of a cool breeze. The air carried the sweet scent of night-blooming jasmine, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp stone. Walter's mind wandered to thoughts of his upcoming position at Limmeridge House in Cumberland. A mixture of excitement and apprehension fluttered in his chest, like a caged bird seeking freedom. The prospect of a fresh start in the countryside filled him with hope, yet a nagging uncertainty lingered in the corners of his mind. Suddenly, the serenity of the night shattered. A figure emerged from the shadows, materializing like a ghost in the moonlight. It was a woman dressed entirely in white. Her appearance was so sudden, so otherworldly, that Walter's breath caught in his throat. She moved with the urgency of a hunted animal, her eyes wide with fear, reflecting the silvery moonlight. Before Walter could gather his wits, the woman's trembling hand touched his shoulder. The contact sent a jolt through him, as if he'd been struck by lightning. Her voice when she spoke was a desperate whisper that seemed to carry on the night breeze. "Please, sir," she pleaded, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I need to get to London. Can you help me? I've just escaped, and I don't know where I am." Walter's heart raced, torn between caution and compassion. The woman's distress was palpable, hanging in the air like a thick fog. Her white dress seemed to glow in the moonlight, making her appear almost ethereal. The contrast between her ghostly appearance and the dark, brooding streets of London created an unsettling tableau. "Of course," Walter found himself saying, his voice steadier than he felt. "Let me help you find a cab." As they moved through the streets, Walter couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shadows seemed to shift and move, taking on sinister shapes. Every rustle of leaves, every distant footstep, sent a shiver down his spine. The woman's fear was contagious, and Walter found himself glancing over his shoulder with increasing frequency. Their search for a cab took on a frantic quality, each passing minute stretching like an eternity. The streets, once familiar and comforting, now seemed like a labyrinth of dark alleys and hidden dangers. When they finally found a cab, Walter felt a mix of relief and regret. As the woman prepared to leave, her eyes met his, filled with a gratitude that words couldn't express. But then, just as she was about to step into the cab, she froze. Her body tensed like a bowstring pulled taut. In the distance, two men appeared, their searching gazes cutting through the night like knives. The woman's fear spiked, almost tangible in the air between them. With trembling lips, she leaned close to Walter. Her words came out in a rush, urgent and filled with warning. "Beware of Sir Percival Glyde," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. The name etched itself into Walter's memory, a puzzle piece to a mystery he didn't yet understand. And then she was gone, the cab disappearing into the London night like a phantom. Walter stood rooted to the spot, his mind reeling from the encounter. The tranquil evening had transformed into something unsettling, leaving him with more questions than answers. As he finally resumed his journey to his mother's house, Walter couldn't shake the feeling that his life had somehow shifted on its axis. The mysterious woman in white, her cryptic warning, and the searching men all swirled in his mind like leaves caught in a whirlwind. That night, as Walter drifted off to sleep, the woman's face and her warning about Sir Percival Glyde haunted his dreams. He tossed and turned, his subconscious weaving fantastical scenarios around the night's events. The next morning, as the sun rose over London, Walter prepared for his journey to Cumberland. As he packed his belongings, his thoughts kept returning to the events of the previous night. The mystery of the woman in white lingered, a shadow at the edge of his consciousness. With a mix of anticipation and unease, Walter set out for Limmeridge House. As the train pulled away from the station, carrying him towards his new life, he couldn't help but wonder what awaited him. Little did he know that as he approached his destination, fate was already weaving its intricate web. As the train rounded a bend, Walter caught his first glimpse of Limmeridge House in the distance. His heart skipped a beat as he realized that his adventure was only beginning. What secrets lay hidden within those grand walls? And how would they intertwine with the mystery of the woman in white? Walter's eyes swept over the magnificent structure of Limmeridge House, its windows gleaming in the afternoon sun like watchful eyes. The grandeur of the estate struck him, a world away from the cramped confines of his London lodgings. A figure emerged from the main entrance, striding purposefully towards him. As she drew closer, Walter realized this must be Marian Halcombe. Her intelligent eyes and confident bearing immediately set her apart from the demure ladies he was accustomed to in London society. "Mr. Hartright, welcome to Limmeridge House," Marian greeted him warmly, her voice carrying a hint of amusement at his obvious awe. "I trust your journey wasn't too taxing?" Walter found himself instantly at ease in her presence, her frank manner refreshing change. "Not at all, Miss Halcombe. The scenery alone was worth the trip." Marian's lips curved into a smile. "Then let me show you more of it. Come, I'll give you a tour of the house and grounds." As they walked, the crunch of gravel beneath their feet mingled with the distant call of birds. Marian's comprehensive knowledge of Limmeridge House became apparent. She led Walter through grand halls adorned with priceless artwork, their footsteps echoing off marble floors. Libraries filled with leather-bound tomes beckoned, the musty scent of old paper hanging in the air. Sitting rooms spoke of generations of refined taste, each piece of furniture telling its own story. The tour was punctuated by Marian's witty observations and historical anecdotes, bringing the house to life in Walter's imagination. Her sharp intellect and dry humor sparked a genuine fondness in him, a friendship forming with each step they took. Their path eventually led them to a secluded wing of the house. The air here felt different, heavy with an unspoken tension. "And here," Marian said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "is where you'll find Mr. Frederick Fairley, my uncle and Laura's guardian." Walter's curiosity was piqued, a shiver of anticipation running down his spine. "I've heard he's quite particular." Marian's eyes twinkled with mischief. "That's one way to put it. Uncle Frederick is what you might call an eccentric hypochondriac. He rarely leaves these rooms, preferring the company of his art collection to that of actual people." The meeting with Frederick Fairley was as bizarre as Marian had hinted. The man lay on a chaise lounge, surrounded by exquisite artworks, his pale face a mask of affected suffering. The room was dimly lit, heavy curtains blocking out most of the sunlight. Every word seemed to pain Mr. Fairley, his whispers barely audible in the oppressive silence. Walter left the encounter feeling as if he'd stepped into a peculiar dream, one populated by fragile men who flinched at shadows. The next day dawned bright and clear, filled with promise. Walter's heart quickened as Marian led him to the garden, where he was to meet Laura Fairley. The sweet scent of blooming flowers filled the air, butterflies dancing on the warm breeze. As they rounded a corner, he saw her, and the world seemed to stop. Laura stood among the roses, the sunlight catching in her golden hair like a halo. For a moment, Walter forgot to breathe, his heart pounding in his chest. It wasn't just her beauty that struck him, though she was undeniably lovely. It was the uncanny resemblance she bore to the mysterious woman in white he'd encountered on that fateful night in London. The memory of that ghostly figure sent a chill down his spine, even as Laura's warm smile melted his heart. As Laura turned and smiled at him, Walter felt a connection spark between them, instant and electric. Over the following days, as he settled into his role as drawing master to both Laura and Marian, that spark grew into a steady flame. They found themselves seeking each other's company, sharing quiet moments in the garden or the library. Laura's gentle laugh and keen artistic eye captivated Walter, while his passion for art and nature resonated deeply with her. Their growing attraction was evident in lingering glances and hands that brushed together just a moment too long, each touch sending sparks through Walter's body. But shadows lurked at the edges of this blossoming romance. Walter couldn't shake the memory of the woman in white's warning, a chill running down his spine whenever he recalled her words. The happiness he'd found at Limmeridge House felt fragile, as if it could shatter at any moment, and then came the blow that did just that, shattering his newfound happiness like glass. "Laura is engaged," Marian told him one evening, her voice heavy with sympathy, "to Sir Percival Glyde, a baronet." The news hit Walter like a physical force, leaving him reeling. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, his dreams of a future with Laura crumbling to dust. But beneath the heartbreak, a cold realization dawned. Sir Percival Glyde, the very man the woman in white had warned him about. The coincidence was too great to ignore, setting off alarm bells in Walter's mind. Driven by a mix of heartbreak and burning curiosity, Walter threw himself into investigating the mystery. His search led him to a letter, penned by a former housekeeper, that spoke of a young girl named Catherick. As he read the description of Anne's striking resemblance to Laura, a chill ran through him, raising goosebumps on his skin. The pieces of the puzzle were there, just out of reach. As Walter stared at the letter, his mind racing, he knew that the secrets of Limmeridge House ran deeper than he could have imagined. The mystery of Catherick and her connection to Laura Fairley loomed before him, a shadow threatening to engulf the brightness that had entered his life since arriving at Limmeridge House. His heart pounded as he realized the gravity of what he'd uncovered. This was no mere coincidence. There was a dark secret at the heart of Limmeridge House, one that could have dire consequences for Laura. As the weight of this knowledge settled on his shoulders, Walter knew he couldn't face this alone. He needed an ally, someone he could trust implicitly. With trembling hands, he folded the letter and slipped it into his pocket. His mind was made up. He would confide in Marian, share his suspicions and the strange encounter with the woman in white. Together, perhaps they could unravel this mystery before it was too late. As he strode purposefully towards Marian's quarters, a sense of urgency propelled him forward. Little did he know, this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. Walter and Marian's curiosity and concern had reached a boiling point. They could no longer sit idly by, and so they embarked on a thorough investigation into Catherick's connection to Limmeridge House. The crisp autumn air nipped at their faces as they made their way to the village school, a quaint building nestled among rolling hills painted in hues of gold and crimson. The gravel crunched beneath their feet, each step bringing them closer to uncovering the truth that had eluded them for so long. Inside the school, the musty scent of old books and faded memories enveloped them. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight, filtering through grimy windows, as Walter and Marian pored over yellowed records, their fingers tracing names long forgotten. The scratching of pen on paper echoed in the empty classroom as they took notes, piecing together the puzzle of Anne's past. "Look at this," Marian whispered, her voice tinged with excitement. "Anne was a student here." Walter leaned in, his breath warm on Marian's cheek as he read the faded ink. "And there's more," he murmured, his finger hovering over another entry. "She had a close bond with Laura's mother." The revelation sent a shiver down their spines, the air around them suddenly thick with unspoken implications. What secrets lay hidden in this unexpected connection? Their pursuit of answers led them down an increasingly dark path. Each discovery was like a heavy curtain being drawn back, revealing shadows they had never known existed. The most disturbing fact emerged like a monster from the depths. Anne had been placed in an asylum by none other than Sir Percival Glyde. The news hung in the air like a thick fog, clouding their perception of the man Laura was set to marry. Walter's fists clenched at his sides, his jaw tight with suppressed anger. Marian's face paled, her eyes wide with shock and growing concern for her sister. As if summoned by their discoveries, Anne managed to contact Laura directly. Her words, urgent and filled with fear, echoed through the halls of Limmeridge House. "Do not marry Sir Percival Glyde." The warning carried with it the weight of a dark secret, one that threatened to upend everything they thought they knew. Laura's world, once so certain, began to crumble around her like a sandcastle battered by relentless waves. Doubt crept in like a persistent shadow, growing longer with each passing day. She found herself caught in a storm of emotions, torn between the promise made to her late father and the undeniable feelings blossoming for Walter. Marian watched her sister's inner turmoil with growing concern, her heart aching at the sight of Laura's once bright eyes now clouded with uncertainty. Her attempts to postpone the wedding were met with fierce resistance from Mr. Fairley, his insistence on honoring the engagement as unyielding as the stone walls of Limmeridge House itself. As the wedding day loomed closer, Tension crackled through the air like electricity before a storm. The very foundations of Limmeridge House seemed to groan under the weight of unspoken words and suppressed emotions. Laura's doubts grew like vines, threatening to choke out any remaining certainty. Walter, meanwhile, fought a battle of his own. His feelings for Laura, once a gentle warmth, now burned like a raging fire in his chest. Yet duty and honor held him back, creating a conflict that threatened to tear him apart. He found himself wandering the grounds of Limmeridge House late into the night, the cool air doing little to soothe the turmoil in his mind. Fate, it seemed, was not done with them yet. On a misty evening, as shadows lengthened across the estate grounds like grasping fingers, Walter encountered Catherick once more. She appeared like a ghost, pale and ethereal in the fading light, her white dress billowing around her like smoke. "Anne!" Walter called out, his voice urgent. But before he could reach her, before he could voice the questions that burned on his tongue, she vanished into the gathering darkness. The encounter left Walter frustrated, yet more determined than ever to uncover the truth that seemed to dance just beyond his grasp. As the final preparations for the wedding fell into place, a palpable sense of unease settled over Limmeridge House. It was as if the very walls could sense the storm brewing within. Laura's doubts, once whispers, now screamed in her mind, keeping her awake long into the night. Walter, grappling with his conflicting emotions and sense of duty, felt like a man standing on the edge of a precipice, the abyss of uncertainty yawning before him. The future, once so clear, now stretched before them like an uncharted sea, full of hidden dangers and uncertain tides. As the sun set on another day of unanswered questions and mounting tension, Walter found himself standing alone in the garden, his heart heavy with the weight of an impossible decision. The cool night air carried the scent of roses, a bittersweet reminder of Laura's presence. With a deep, shuddering breath, he realized that he could no longer stay at Limmeridge House, not when every moment was a torment of unfulfilled longing and duty. As the shadows lengthened around him, Walter made a choice that would alter the course of all their lives forever. Walter's heart was torn asunder, caught between his burgeoning love for Laura and his unyielding sense of honor. This internal conflict led him to make the agonizing decision to leave Limmeridge House. The weight of his choice pressed down on him like a physical burden, each step feeling heavier than the last as he sought out Marian. The library, usually a haven of peace, now seemed to close in around him as he poured out his heart to his trusted confidant. The words tumbled from his lips, raw and unfiltered, like water breaking through a dam. Marian's eyes, usually sharp and discerning, softened with a mixture of sympathy and understanding. The rustle of her skirts as she shifted in her seat was the only sound that punctuated Walter's impassioned speech. When he finally fell silent, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner seemed deafening. "You're doing the right thing, Walter," Marian said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the only honorable path." With Marian's blessing bolstering his resolve, Walter steeled himself for the most difficult conversation of all, his farewell to Laura. The garden, once a place of joy and stolen glances, now felt like a bittersweet battleground. The sweet scent of roses hung heavy in the air, a cruel reminder of what could never be. Laura stood among the blooms, her figure silhouetted against the setting sun. As Walter approached, he could see the clouds of sadness in her usually bright eyes, a mirror to his own tumultuous emotions. The space between them crackled with unspoken words and suppressed feelings. "Promise me you'll confide in Marian," Walter urged, his voice hoarse with emotion. "And please be cautious of Sir Percival. Remember the warning from the woman in white." Laura nodded, her lips trembling with words left unsaid. The chasm of propriety between them felt both vast and infinitesimal, an invisible barrier neither dared to cross. Determined to leave no stone unturned, Walter spent his last days at Limmeridge scouring the village for information about Catherick. His footsteps echoed on cobblestone streets as he chased whispers and half-remembered tales. But the mystery remained stubbornly opaque, leaving him with more questions than answers. The morning of his departure arrived with a cruel beauty, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold that seemed to mock Walter's heavy heart. He found Marian waiting for him on the front steps, her usual composure tinged with a hint of sorrow. "Take care of her," Walter implored, his voice thick with emotion. "Keep her safe." Marian clasped his hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "With my life," she promised, the weight of her words hanging in the air between them. As the carriage pulled up, its wheels crunching on the gravel drive, Walter allowed himself one last, lingering look at Limmeridge House. The grand old building stood silent, its windows reflecting the morning light like unshed tears. Every stone, every blade of grass seemed to hold a memory, of laughter shared, of secrets whispered, of a love that bloomed too late. With a heavy heart, Walter climbed into the carriage. As it pulled away, he felt as though he were leaving a piece of himself behind. The estate grew smaller in the distance, fading like a beautiful dream upon waking. The rhythmic clop of horses' hooves seemed to echo the beating of his heart, each step taking him further from everything he held dear. Walter carried with him a bittersweet mix of cherished memories and nagging questions. The mystery of Catherick and Sir Percival Glyde still burned in his mind, a puzzle he was leaving unsolved. As Limmeridge House disappeared from view, obscured by a bend in the road, Walter couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a departure. It was the closing of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. The road ahead stretched out before him, long and winding, leading him away from the only place he had ever truly felt at home. Yet even as distance grew between him and Limmeridge, Walter's thoughts remained fixed on Laura and the fate that awaited her. Little did he know that at that very moment, preparations were already underway for an event that would change everything. In the coming days, the grand ceremony at Limmeridge Church would be a spectacle to behold. Laura and Sir Percival Glyde would stand before the altar, ready to exchange vows that would bind them in matrimony. But as Walter's carriage disappeared into the horizon, one question lingered in the air. Would this union truly bring happiness, or was it the beginning of something far more sinister? The grand ceremony at Limmeridge Church was a spectacle to behold. Laura and Sir Percival Glyde stood before the altar, ready to exchange vows that would bind them in matrimony. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across Laura's shimmering white gown. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and anticipation. As Laura's eyes met Sir Percival's, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind, quick as a shadow passing over the sun. She swallowed hard, her father's dying wish echoing in her ears. "I do," Laura whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustle of silk and the collective held breath of the assembled guests. The words felt heavy on her tongue, as if speaking them aloud had suddenly made them real and irrevocable. The church bells pealed, their joyous clangor a stark contrast to the knot tightening in Laura's stomach. As the newlyweds emerged from the church, a shower of rose petals rained down upon them. The delicate petals clung to Laura's veil like fragile hopes, easily brushed away. Without pause, the couple embarked on their honeymoon to Italy. They were accompanied by Marian, Laura's devoted sister, and Count Fosco, Sir Percival's enigmatic friend. The Count, an Italian of imposing stature and magnetic charm, was married to Laura's aunt, Madame Fosco. Once vivacious, Madame Fosco had become a silent shadow of her former self since her marriage. As their carriage rattled along the winding roads of Italy, Laura's initial excitement began to wane. The rolling hills and picturesque villages that had once filled her with wonder now seemed to mock her growing unease. Sir Percival, once attentive and gallant, revealed a different side with each passing day. In Venice, the city of romance, Laura's heart sank deeper into disillusionment. As they glided along the canals in a gondola, the gentle lapping of water against wood was shattered by Sir Percival's sudden outburst. Laura had accidentally splashed water on his new coat, and his eyes, once warm and inviting, now glinted with a cold fury that sent a chill down her spine. "You clumsy fool," he hissed, his fingers digging into her arm. "Can't you do anything right?" Laura recoiled, the magic of Venice crumbling around her like the city's ancient facades. Florence brought no respite. Amidst the beauty of Renaissance art, Sir Percival's controlling nature emerged like a serpent from behind a masterpiece. He dictated Laura's every move, from what she wore to whom she spoke with, his grip on her life tightening like a noose. "You will wear the blue dress tonight," he commanded, his tone brooking no argument, and you will not speak unless spoken to. Is that clear?" Laura nodded, feeling the weight of the gilded cage closing around her. Rome, the eternal city, became a prison of Laura's shattered dreams. The grandeur of the Colosseum loomed over her, a monument to her own captivity. She clung to Marian like a lifeline, finding solace in her sister's unwavering support. Marian, ever vigilant, watched the unfolding drama with growing concern. Her keen eyes didn't miss the subtle glances exchanged between Sir Percival and Count Fosco, nor the way the Count's gaze lingered on Laura. There was something unsettling about the Count, like a spider waiting patiently in its web. One evening, as they dined al fresco in a quaint trattoria, the air heavy with the scent of garlic and secrets, Marian observed the Count in conversation with Sir Percival. The Count's words, though spoken softly, seemed to carry the weight of command. Sir Percival nodded, his face a mask of compliance. "It's all arranged," the Count murmured, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. "She won't suspect a thing." It was then that Marian realized the true nature of their relationship. The puppet and the puppeteer. A chill ran down her spine, colder than the evening breeze. As their journey drew to a close, the group's dynamics had shifted dramatically. Laura, once bubbly and full of life, had become a mere shadow of herself. Sir Percival's mask of civility had slipped, revealing the cruel man beneath. And Count Fosco, with his honeyed words and calculating eyes, loomed over them all like a gathering storm. The return to England loomed on the horizon, promising familiar surroundings but unknown challenges. As they boarded the ship that would carry them across the channel, Marian's resolve hardened. She would protect Laura at all costs, even if it meant standing against the combined forces of Sir Percival and Count Fosco. As the coastline of Dover came into view, shrouded in a foreboding mist, Marian overheard a whispered conversation between Sir Percival and the Count. "Blackwater Park is ready," Sir Percival muttered. "Everything is in place." The Count's reply sent a chill through Marian's heart. "Excellent. Once we arrive, the real game begins." Marian's eyes widened in alarm. What sinister plans awaited them at Blackwater Park? As the ship docked, she knew that the battle to protect Laura was only just beginning. The group's journey came to an end as they returned to England. They settled at Sir Percival's estate, Blackwater Park, a place that would soon become the stage for unfolding tensions and hidden agendas. As they approached the imposing gates of Blackwater Park, a chill ran down Laura's spine. The estate loomed before them, its gray stone walls seeming to absorb the weak sunlight. Marian squeezed her sister's hand reassuringly, but even she couldn't shake the feeling of foreboding that settled over them like a heavy cloak. Days passed and the true nature of Sir Percival began to reveal itself. His charm peeled away like old wallpaper, exposing the rot beneath. The once jovial man transformed before their eyes, his smile twisting into a sneer, his eyes hardening with greed. The very air in Blackwater Park grew thick and oppressive, as if the house itself was holding its breath. One afternoon, the tension reached a breaking point. Laura found herself cornered in the study, Sir Percival's bulk blocking the doorway. In his trembling hands, he clutched a document, its crisp edges at odds with his disheveled appearance. "Sign it," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "Sign it now, and all our problems will disappear." Laura's heart hammered against her ribs. She could smell the brandy on his breath, see the desperation etched into the lines of his face. Walter's words of caution echoed in her mind, a lifeline in the stormy sea of her husband's demands. "I won't sign anything I don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible but firm. Sir Percival's face contorted with rage. The mask of civility shattered completely, revealing the monster beneath. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the windows rattled in their frames. Laura sank to the floor, her legs no longer able to support her. Marian became Laura's constant shadow, her hawk-like gaze missing nothing. She watched as Count Fosco's influence over Sir Percival grew, their hushed conversations and meaningful glances setting off alarm bells in her mind. Something sinister was brewing. She was sure of it. The once peaceful halls of Blackwater Park now echoed with Sir Percival's outbursts. His temper flared at the slightest provocation, sending servants scurrying like mice before a cat. Laura grew pale and withdrawn, seeking solace in Marian's unwavering support. One night, As the wind howled like a mournful spirit, Laura confided in Marian. Tears glistened in her eyes, catching the flickering candlelight. "I'm so unhappy, Marian," she whispered. "And Walter, I still love him. I can't help it." Marian held her sister close, feeling Laura's body shake with silent sobs. Her own heart ached, torn between loyalty to her sister and the knowledge that this love could never be. As if the situation wasn't tense enough, a ghost from the past reappeared. Anne Catherick, pale as death itself, was seen lurking on the outskirts of Blackwater Park. Her presence added another layer to the mystery, her secret about Sir Percival tantalizing and just out of reach. Marian, driven by a desperate need to protect her sister, tried to make contact with Anne. But at every turn, she found herself thwarted. The watchful eyes of Count Fosco and Sir Percival seemed to be everywhere, like malevolent spirits haunting the grounds. With each passing day, the atmosphere at Blackwater Park grew more oppressive. The very walls seemed to close in, trapping them all in a web of deceit and danger. Marian's conviction that Laura was in grave danger solidified, becoming as unshakable as the foundations of Blackwater Park itself. In the dead of night, as the rest of the household slept, Marian sat at her desk. The candle flame danced, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Her mind raced as she formulated a plan to save Laura from whatever nefarious scheme Sir Percival and Count Fosco were concocting. As she dipped her pen in ink, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the candle, plunging the room into darkness. In that moment of blindness, Marian heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps in the corridor outside her room, approaching with slow, deliberate purpose. The night unleashed a tempest of fury upon Blackwater Park. Rain lashed against the windows like an army of watery fists, determined to breach the manor's defenses. The night unleashed a tempest of fury upon Blackwater Park. Rain lashed against the windows like an army of watery fists, determined to breach the manor's defenses. Lightning tore through the sky in angry flashes, followed by the ominous growl of thunder that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. In this tumultuous atmosphere, Marian's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and steely resolve as she made her way to the balcony. The cold stone beneath her bare feet sent icy tendrils up her legs, but Marian pushed the discomfort aside. She moved with the grace of a cat, her nightgown whipping around her ankles as she pressed herself against the wall. The wind howled, threatening to reveal her presence, but Marian held firm, becoming one with the shadows. Her ears strained to catch every word floating up from below, fighting against the storm's cacophony. Sir Percival's voice, dripping with malice, cut through the noise like a knife. "It's perfect, Fosco. With Anne Catherick's resemblance to Laura, we can pull this off without a hitch." Count Fosco's reply was smooth as silk, but no less chilling. "Indeed, my friend, Laura's fortune will be ours and no one will be the wiser." As the two men laid out their diabolical plan, Marian's blood turned to ice in her veins. The scheme was as intricate as it was cruel, involving the exploitation of poor Anne Catherick's similarity to Laura. With each revelation, Marian's resolve hardened like steel. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. She would not let them succeed. Hours crawled by, the storm showing no signs of abating. Marian's limbs grew numb from the cold and the awkward position, but she dared not move. Every detail, every nuance of their conversation etched itself into her memory, to be faithfully recorded in her diary later. The weight of her discovery pressed down on her like a physical force, spurring her on despite her exhaustion. When at last the conspirators retired for the night, Marian made her way back to her room on unsteady legs. Her fingers, stiff with cold, fumbled with her pen as she frantically scribbled every word she had overheard into her diary. The scratching of the pen on paper seemed deafening in the quiet of her room, each word a testament to the danger that now surrounded them. But the night's ordeal had taken its toll. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold that belied the darkness within the house, Marian felt the first stirrings of illness. A fever began to burn through her body, her mind clouding with delirium. She fought against it with every ounce of her strength, knowing that Laura's safety depended on her, but the sickness was relentless. Days blurred together as Marian tossed and turned in her sickbed, her fevered mind conjuring nightmarish visions of Laura in danger. The servants flitted in and out like ghosts, their faces a blend of concern and indifference. Through the haze of her illness, Marian sensed the growing isolation, the tightening of the net around her beloved sister. Laura, unaware of the looming threat, spent her days by Marian's bedside. Her gentle voice was a lifeline in Marian's sea of confusion, a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. But even this small comfort was not to last. As Marian's condition worsened, Laura found herself increasingly pushed aside by Sir Percival and Count Fosco, their false concern a thin veil for their true intentions. The servants, once a potential source of aid, now moved about the house like automatons, their wills bent to the whims of Sir Percival and the Count. The atmosphere at Blackwater Park grew heavy with unspoken tensions, a powder keg waiting for a spark. The very air seemed to thicken, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. In a moment of lucidity, Marian's feverish gaze fell upon her diary, lying innocently on her bedside table. A chill that had nothing to do with her fever ran through her as she realized the vulnerability of her secret. Her heart raced, panic clawing at her throat. But before she could act, darkness claimed her once more, dragging her back into the depths of delirium. Count Fosco, his cat-like treads silent on the thick carpet, slipped into the sick room. His eyes, sharp and calculating, fell upon the diary. With a triumphant smile that never reached his cold eyes, he snatched it up, his fingers caressing the cover as if it were a precious jewel. The weight of it in his hands felt like victory. As Marian's fever raged on, her sister's fate hanging by a thread, Count Fosco settled into a comfortable chair and began to read. With each page, his smile grew wider, more sinister. The game had changed, and now, armed with the knowledge of Marian's discovery, he and Sir Percival could accelerate their nefarious plans. Laura, isolated and increasingly desperate, found herself adrift in a sea of uncertainty. With Marian incapacitated and the household seemingly turned against her, she was more vulnerable than ever to the machinations of her husband and the Count. As Marian's condition continued to deteriorate, the stage was set for the conspirators to enact their devious plan, with Laura now squarely in their crosshairs. The storm outside had finally abated, but a new tempest was brewing within the walls of Blackwater Park. As night fell once more, an eerie calm settled over the house. But in the shadows, unseen forces were moving, pieces falling into place for a game where the stakes were life and death. And in her fevered dreams, Marian fought desperately to wake, to warn her sister of the danger that lurked just beyond the door. The air in Blackwater Park hung thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by Marian's labored breathing. Outside her sick room, footsteps echoed through the hallways, carrying with them the weight of impending doom. The air in Blackwater Park hung thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by Marian's labored breathing. Outside her sick room, footsteps echoed through the hallways, carrying with them the weight of impending doom. Sir Percival's eyes glinted with malice as he approached Laura, his voice dripping with false concern. "My dear," he cooed, "I believe a trip to London would do you good. The fresh air and change of scenery might lift your spirits." Laura, her heart heavy with worry for her bedridden sister, hesitated before reluctantly agreeing. Unbeknownst to Laura, fate had already dealt its cruel hand. In the bustling streets of London, Anne Catherick, Laura's uncanny look-alike, had succumbed to heart failure. Her passing was but a cog in the intricate machinery of Sir Percival and Count Fosco's devious plot. The two men moved with the precision of seasoned predators. Anne's lifeless body became a macabre prop in their elaborate charade. Under the cover of a dreary London afternoon, they laid her to rest in a grave bearing Laura's name. The thud of earth on the coffin seemed to echo the sound of truth being buried alive. Meanwhile, Laura found herself thrust into a waking nightmare. The world spun around her as rough hands forced her into the back of a carriage. Confusion etched deep lines on her face as she was brought to the forbidding gates of an asylum. The iron bars clanged shut behind her, sealing her fate. "There must be some mistake," Laura cried, her voice cracking with desperation. "I'm Laura Glyde, not Anne Catherick." But her pleas fell on deaf ears, dismissed as the ravings of a disturbed mind. The asylum's cold, sterile walls seemed to close in around her. Each day brought new horrors, harsh treatments, indifferent faces, and the constant drone of other patients' cries. Laura felt pieces of herself slipping away, like leaves carried off by an autumn wind. Outside the asylum's oppressive walls, Sir Percival played his part with chilling perfection. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, now brimmed with crocodile tears as he mourned his deceased wife. He arranged a somber funeral, each detail meticulously planned to cement the deception. Count Fosco moved through society like a shark through calm waters, his charm concealing the danger that lurked beneath. With each well-placed word and calculated gesture, he wove a tapestry of lies so intricate that even the most suspicious minds were ensnared. As the cruel deception unfolded, Laura's substantial fortune slipped into Sir Percival's greedy hands. The weight of the gold in his pockets seemed to drown out any whisper of conscience that might have remained. In her isolated sick room, Marian remained oblivious to her sister's dire fate. Like a bird with clipped wings, she was kept apart from the world, fed carefully crafted lies about Laura's whereabouts. Her illness, once a cause for concern, had become a convenient tool in the conspirators' arsenal. Days blurred into weeks, and Laura's hope dwindled like a candle flame in a storm. The asylum became her world, a nightmarish realm where her true self seemed to fade with each passing moment. She clung desperately to memories of her past life, afraid that they too might slip away in this sea of confusion and despair. "I am Laura," she would whisper to herself in the dark of night, her voice barely audible over the creaking of the asylum's old bones. "I am Laura. I am Laura." The mantra became her lifeline, the only thing keeping her from losing herself completely in the abyss of her new reality. As the chapter of Laura's life that had once been filled with promise now seemed to be written in the ink of tragedy, a faint glimmer of hope began to stir. In her sick room, Marian's fingers twitched, her eyelids fluttering as consciousness slowly returned. The fog of illness began to lift, bringing with it a dawning realization that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Marian's recovery from her severe illness was a grueling ordeal. As her strength gradually returned, so did the crushing realization of Laura's terrible fate. The weight of this knowledge settled on her shoulders like a heavy, sodden cloak, threatening to drag her back into the depths of despair. But beneath the surface, a fierce determination ignited within her, burning away the last vestiges of weakness. The bustling streets of London became a blur of faces and noise as Marian pursued every lead, no matter how faint. Each dead end and false hope only fueled her resolve, driving her forward with a single-minded intensity. Sleep became a distant memory, and meals were often forgotten in her relentless pursuit. The city itself seemed to conspire against her, its winding alleys and crowded thoroughfares hiding Laura's whereabouts behind a veil of indifference. Days bled into weeks, marked only by the growing hollowness in Marian's eyes and the trembling of her exhausted hands. And then, like a ray of sunlight breaking through storm clouds, her efforts bore fruit. The asylum where Laura was being held loomed before her, a grim fortress of stone and iron that seemed to mock the very concept of freedom. Its imposing walls and barred windows sent a chill down Marian's spine, but she steeled herself for what lay ahead. With a mixture of cunning and sheer force of will, Marian orchestrated Laura's rescue. Her heart pounded like a war drum as they fled into the night, the sound of pursuit echoing in their ears long after they'd lost their pursuers in the labyrinthine streets. The sisters found themselves in a poor area of London, a maze of narrow alleys and crumbling buildings that offered anonymity but little comfort. They huddled in a tiny, drafty room, jumping at every creak of the floorboards and rattle of the windows. The specter of Sir Percival and Count Fosco loomed large in their minds, turning every passing shadow into a potential threat. Survival became a daily struggle, each moment fraught with tension. They rationed their meager resources, often going to bed with hunger gnawing at their bellies. Marian took odd jobs when she could, always careful to avoid drawing attention to herself or Laura. The constant fear of discovery wore on them both, etching lines of worry on their faces and stealing the light from their eyes. Meanwhile, Walter Hartright had returned from his travels abroad, his attempt to forget Laura having failed miserably. The news of her supposed death hit him like a physical blow, leaving him hollow and grief-stricken. The world seemed to lose its color, sounds muffled as if he were underwater. Seeking some form of closure, he made his way to her grave, his steps heavy with sorrow. The graveyard was quiet, a place of shadows and whispered memories. Walter stood before Laura's headstone, his fingers tracing the cold, unyielding letters of her name. The finality of it threatened to overwhelm him. And then, like a scene from a dream, or perhaps a nightmare, he saw them. Marian and Laura, very much alive, standing just a few yards away. The world tilted on its axis, reality bending and reshaping itself around this impossible sight. For a moment, no one moved, as if fearing that the slightest motion would shatter this fragile moment. Then, with a cry that was part joy, part disbelief, Walter rushed forward. They collided in a tangle of arms and tears, holding on to each other as if they might never let go. The warmth of their embrace chased away the chill of the graveyard, replacing despair with a fierce, trembling hope. As the initial shock subsided, their joy gave way to a renewed sense of purpose. Walter's love for Laura, which had never truly dimmed, blazed anew in the face of her suffering. He vowed then and there to help restore her identity and bring those responsible to justice, his words carrying the weight of an unbreakable oath. Laura, still bearing the invisible scars of her ordeal, clung to Marian and Walter like a lifeline. The asylum had left its mark on her, turning her once bright spirit into a fragile, flickering flame. But with each passing day, surrounded by the unwavering support of her sister and the man she loved, that flame grew stronger. They found a safe house in a quiet corner of London, a modest dwelling that became their sanctuary and war room. The peeling wallpaper and creaky floorboards offered a strange comfort, a far cry from the opulent surroundings of their past lives. Walter took charge of the investigation with a fervor that bordered on obsession. He pored over documents, tracked down witnesses, and pieced together the puzzle of Sir Percival and Count Fosco's deception. Marian supported his efforts tirelessly, her sharp mind and fierce loyalty proving invaluable. Laura, though still haunted by her experiences, slowly began to reclaim pieces of herself. Some days were harder than others, filled with tears and trembling hands. But there were also moments of laughter, of quiet companionship, of hope rekindled. The bond between the three grew stronger with each passing day, forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by their shared purpose. As they worked to unravel the conspiracy and restore Laura's rightful place in the world, they found strength in each other. Marian's unwavering determination, Walter's passionate dedication, and Laura's resilient spirit combined to form a formidable force. Together they faced the daunting task ahead, ready to fight for justice and reclaim the life that had been so cruelly stolen. In that small, unassuming house, far from the grand estates and social circles they once knew, the trio formed a new kind of family. United by love, loyalty, and a shared quest for truth, they stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that as long as they had each other, they could overcome anything. As night fell, Walter paced the small room, his mind racing with the information they had gathered. A name kept surfacing in their investigations: Anne Catherick. Who was this mysterious woman, and what secret did she hold that could unravel everything? With a determined glint in his eye, Walter turned to Marian and Laura. "I need to dig deeper into Sir Percival's past," he said, his voice low and intense. "There's something about Anne Catherick that doesn't add up, and I think she might be the key to exposing everything." Little did they know that this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would test their resolve like never before. Walter Hartright set out on a mission to uncover Sir Percival's hidden past. His investigation was thorough and meticulous, driven by the knowledge that Anne Catherick held a secret that could change everything. The trail led him to a remote village nestled in the rolling hills of the English countryside. As Walter's carriage rattled over the uneven road, the landscape seemed to shift, becoming wilder and more secretive. Mist clung to the hollows between hills, as if nature itself was conspiring to keep secrets hidden. The village appeared before him like a painting come to life. Thatched roof cottages huddled together, their windows gleaming like knowing eyes. Cobblestone streets wound between them, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps and whispered conversations. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, carrying with it the weight of unspoken histories. Walter's footsteps echoed loudly in the quiet streets, each sound a challenge to the village's silence. He felt the weight of unseen gazes upon him, curiosity and suspicion mingling in equal measure. Lace curtains twitched in windows, and doors creaked shut as he passed. The village held its secrets close, a collective guardian of long-buried truths. At first, the locals were as unyielding as the ancient stones of their homes. Years of gossip and speculation had taught them the value of discretion. But Walter was patient, his gentle persistence and earnest demeanor slowly chipping away at their resolve. He shared pints in the local pub, helped an old woman with her groceries, and listened to tales of village life with genuine interest. Slowly, like water wearing away rock, the villagers began to open up. In the parish records office, Walter found himself surrounded by the musty scent of history. Yellow documents crackled under his fingers, each page a potential key to unlocking the mystery. The room was dim, lit only by a single oil lamp that cast long shadows across the walls. Walter's heart raced with each turn of a page, the anticipation building like a storm about to break. And then, like a bolt of lightning illuminating a dark sky, he found it. The forged marriage certificate of Sir Percival's parents. The revelation hit Walter with physical force, causing him to stumble back against a dusty shelf. Sir Percival, the man who had caused so much pain to Laura and Marian, was a fraud. His title, his estate, his very identity, all built on a lie. As the full implications of his discovery sank in, Walter felt a mix of triumph and trepidation. The weight of this knowledge settled on his shoulders, both a burden and a source of strength. He knew that this information was powerful enough to bring down not just Sir Percival, but potentially the cunning Count Fosco as well. Walter's investigation took him across the length and breadth of England. Each new location brought its own challenges and dangers. In London, he found himself in a narrow alley, the fog so thick he could barely see his hand in front of his face. The sudden glint of a knife in the gaslight sent his heart racing. He narrowly escaped, the sound of his pursuer's footsteps echoing behind him as he ran through the labyrinthine streets. Through it all, Walter's love for Laura burned like a beacon, guiding him through the darkest moments. When doubt crept in, he would close his eyes and picture her face, drawing strength from the memory of her gentle spirit. He imagined her safe with Marian, slowly regaining her strength, her smile returning like the first flowers of spring after a harsh winter. As Walter pieced together the full extent of Sir Percival's fraud, the stakes became increasingly clear. This was not just about Laura's future, but about exposing a crime that had allowed a fraud to prosper for years. The weight of this knowledge both energized and terrified him, as he realized that the final confrontation was drawing near. With each new piece of evidence, Walter moved closer to the truth, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and fear. He knew that the moment of reckoning was approaching, a moment that would change everything. As night fell, Walter found himself standing at the edge of the village, staring at the silhouette of the old church against the darkening sky. His hand clutched the damning evidence, the papers seeming to burn with the weight of their importance. Tomorrow he would confront Sir Percival with the truth. But as he turned to head back to his lodgings, a shadow moved in the corner of his eye. Was it just the wind in the trees, or was someone watching him? Walter's pulse quickened as he realized that his next steps could be his most dangerous yet. Walter's heart pounded as he approached the village church. He was armed with the damning evidence of Sir Percival's fraud, the weight of this knowledge fueling his determination. The ancient stone walls loomed before him, their weathered surfaces casting long, ominous shadows in the fading light. A chill wind whispered through the graveyard, rustling the overgrown grass and carrying with it the musty scent of decay. With trembling hands, Walter pushed open the heavy wooden door. Its creaking hinges shattered the eerie silence, sending a shiver down his spine. Inside, the air hung thick with the scent of old books, burning candles, and centuries of whispered prayers. The flickering light from the candles danced across the worn pews, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that matched the gravity of the moment. Near the altar stood Sir Percival, his face a mask of arrogance and disdain. As Walter approached, The tension between them crackled like electricity before a storm. Each step echoed in the cavernous space, marking the countdown to confrontation. "What brings you here, Hartright?" Sir Percival sneered, his voice bouncing off the stone walls. Walter's voice remained steady, belying the tumult of emotions within. "The truth, Sir Percival. The truth you've tried so hard to hide." As Walter presented his evidence, he watched Sir Percival's facade begin to crumble. The man's eyes darted wildly, like a cornered animal searching for escape. Sweat beaded on his forehead, glistening in the candlelight, and his hands trembled visibly. "You know nothing," Sir Percival spat, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his panic. In a desperate move, Sir Percival lunged for the vestry, where the forged records were kept. Walter's heart leapt to his throat as he saw the glint of a match in Sir Percival's hand. Time seemed to slow, each second stretching into eternity. "No!" Walter shouted, his voice raw with urgency. But it was too late. The flame caught the edge of an old document, and within seconds the fire was spreading with terrifying speed. Smoke billowed through the church, turning the sacred space into a hellish inferno. The acrid smell filled Walter's nostrils, making his eyes water and his lungs burn. Sir Percival's triumphant laugh turned to coughs as the smoke thickened. Walter, fighting against the heat and choking air, tried to reach him, but the flames had created an impenetrable barrier, a wall of orange and red that danced with malevolent glee. "Sir Percival," Walter called out, his voice hoarse, "we must get out." But fate had other plans. A burning beam crashed down with a deafening crack, blocking Sir Percival's escape. His screams of terror were soon swallowed by the roar of the flames. Walter, his eyes stinging with smoke and unshed tears, was forced to retreat. The image of Sir Percival's final moments seared into his memory like a brand. As the church burned, Walter stood outside, watching the flames consume the building and the man who had orchestrated so much misery. The fire seemed to mirror the burning determination in Walter's heart. The quest for justice was far from over. With Sir Percival's dramatic demise, Walter's focus shifted to the true puppet master, Count Fosco. The journey to London felt like crossing a vast chessboard, each move bringing him closer to the final confrontation. The countryside blurred past the train window, a stark contrast to the turmoil in Walter's mind. London's bustling streets and towering buildings were a jarring change from the quiet village Walter had left behind. The city's energy pulsed around him, a cacophony of sounds and smells that threatened to overwhelm his senses. He tracked Fosco to a nondescript townhouse, its unremarkable facade belying the cunning of its occupant. Their meeting was a battle of wits, with Fosco's smooth charm clashing against Walter's unwavering resolve. The room felt charged with tension, every word a calculated move in their verbal chess match. As the evidence mounted, Fosco's mask of civility began to slip, revealing the cornered fox beneath. "You've played the game well, Mr. Hartright," Fosco conceded, his voice a mixture of admiration and bitterness. "But I'm afraid we're at a stalemate." Walter leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Fosco's face. "Not quite, Count. You have something I need, the truth about Laura." Fosco's eyes darted nervously, like a man watching shadows for hidden dangers. "The truth comes at a price, my friend. My life is forfeit if I remain in England." A deal was struck. Fosco's confession in exchange for safe passage out of the country. As Walter watched Fosco's pen scratch across the paper, he felt a mix of triumph and unease. Justice was being served, but at what cost? Fosco fled England like a ghost, leaving behind only whispers and speculation. Walter clutched the confession, the key to restoring Laura's identity and bringing an end to this nightmare. The paper felt heavy in his hands, weighted with the power to change lives. Weeks passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. The London fog rolled in, shrouding the city in mystery. Then, like a bolt from the blue, news arrived from Paris. Fosco had been found dead, his body bearing the marks of a violent end. The secret society he had betrayed had exacted its revenge, closing the final chapter on this twisted tale. As Walter read the report, a chill ran down his spine. The conspirators had met their end. but the echoes of their actions would linger for years to come. He looked out the window, where Laura was tending to the garden, her face peaceful in the warm sunlight. At last, he thought, they could begin to heal. But as Walter prepared to use Fosco's confession to restore Laura's identity, a nagging doubt crept into his mind. What if the confession wasn't enough? What if there were still hidden obstacles to overcome? With a deep breath, he steeled himself for what might be the final battle in this long war for justice. Walter's tireless efforts finally bore fruit. Armed with Fosco's detailed confession and the substantial evidence gathered during his investigation, he was at last able to legally restore Laura's identity. The truth of the conspiracy unfolded like a tapestry being woven before their eyes, each thread revealing another aspect of the intricate plot. As the facts came to light, the heavy fog of deception lifted, allowing the warm sun of justice to shine on Laura's innocence. The air in the courtroom felt thick with anticipation, the wooden benches creaking under the weight of spectators eager to witness the unraveling of such a scandalous affair. Walter's heart pounded in his chest as he stood before the judge, his palms slick with sweat as he presented the fruits of his painstaking investigation. The musty smell of old papers filled his nostrils as he carefully laid out document after document, each one a damning piece of evidence against Sir Percival and Count Fosco. He could feel Laura's eyes on him, a mixture of anxiety and hope etched across her delicate features. Days blurred into weeks as witness after witness took the stand, their testimonies corroborating the incredible story. The courtroom buzzed with whispers and gasps as the full extent of the crimes was exposed. Walter's throat grew dry from the constant speaking, his voice hoarse but unwavering as he fought for Laura's rightful place in the world. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the verdict came. The judge's gavel struck with a resounding crack that seemed to shatter the last remnants of the conspiracy. Laura's fortune was returned to her, her rightful position in society reinstated. The weight of injustice that had burdened them for so long lifted, leaving them lightheaded with relief. As they stepped out of the courthouse, the bright sunlight felt like a blessing on their faces. Walter turned to Laura, their eyes meeting in a silent understanding that needed no words. Their shared struggles had forged a bond stronger than any declaration could express. He reached for her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against his, a simple touch that spoke volumes of their love and devotion. Their wedding was a simple affair, held in a small chapel adorned with wildflowers. The scent of roses and lilies filled the air, mingling with the gentle sound of a nearby stream. Joy permeated every aspect of the ceremony, from the soft rustle of Laura's white gown to the tender way Walter's hands trembled as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Marian stood beside them, her eyes glistening with tears of happiness, her smile radiant with the knowledge that her beloved sister and dear friend had finally found their happiness. Life seemed to bloom anew for the couple. Soon after their marriage, Laura's belly swelled with new life. The arrival of their son was like the first ray of sunshine after a long, stormy night. Walter held the tiny bundle in his arms, marveling at the perfect little fingers and the soft, downy hair. The room was filled with the sweet scent of baby powder and the soft cooing of their newborn, a stark contrast to the darkness they had endured. As if mirroring the positive changes in their personal lives, Walter's artistic career flourished. His talents, long overshadowed by their struggles, were finally recognized. Vibrant canvases filled with emotive scenes adorned gallery walls, bringing not just acclaim, but also financial security to their newfound peace. The scratch of his brush against canvas became a soothing melody in their home, a constant reminder of the beauty that could arise from even the darkest of times. Through it all, Marian remained their rock. Her strength and unwavering support had been the foundation upon which they had rebuilt their lives. The bond between the trio grew stronger with each passing day, their shared experiences creating a family forged in adversity and triumph. Her laughter echoed through the halls of their home, a joyous sound that seemed to chase away any lingering shadows of their past troubles. The decision to return to Limmeridge House was not made lightly. As they approached the familiar gates, the gravel crunching beneath the carriage wheels, a sense of coming home washed over them. The old stone walls held memories both bitter and sweet, But as they stepped into the foyer, the musty scent of old books and polished wood welcomed them like an old friend. Mr. Fairley, humbled by the events and the role his negligence had played in Laura's suffering, greeted them with open arms. His usual complaints were silenced, replaced by a genuine desire to make amends. The house seemed to shed its old skin of secrets and sorrow, embracing its new inhabitants with creaking floorboards and sunlight streaming through freshly cleaned windows. As they settled into life at Limmeridge, laughter echoed through halls that had once been silent. The gardens, once neglected, bloomed with new life under Laura's care. Roses climbed trellises, their sweet fragrance carried on the breeze, while beds of colorful flowers dotted the landscape like a painter's palette. Walter's studio buzzed with creativity, the smell of oil paints and turpentine a constant presence, while Marian's strong presence kept the household running smoothly. Their son's first steps were taken on the very lawn where Walter and Laura had first met. It was a poetic full circle, a reminder of how far they had come. The dark conspiracy that had nearly destroyed them now seemed like a distant nightmare, fading in the warm light of their new reality. The child's laughter, bright and carefree, seemed to chase away the last lingering shadows of their past troubles. As the sun set on another peaceful day, Walter, Laura, and Marian sat together on the terrace, watching the child play among the flower beds. The sky was painted in hues of pink and gold, a beautiful backdrop to their contentment. Their eyes met, sharing a look of understanding and deep affection. They had weathered the storm together, emerging stronger and more united than ever before. Limmeridge House, once the site of so much deception and sorrow, had become a home filled with love, laughter, and hope. The old walls seemed to hum with newfound warmth, embracing the family and their bright future. As night fell and stars began to twinkle in the velvet sky, Walter took Laura's hand in his, feeling the solid presence of Marian beside them. They looked forward to a future bound by love and strengthened by adversity, secure in the knowledge that together they could overcome anything.
This book was generated using Speakter's AI voices. You can create human-like voiceovers in over 50 languages.